Alright kids, here we go with part 3 of our unit on empires and global trade. Today we're going to be talking about Japan and China, two of the major powers in the Far East. We're going to start with China first. Okay, by 1500 China sought to limit the influence of European merchants. China was not interested in trading with Europe, nor did they trust them. So they probably had good reason for not trusting European merchants, as they were hearing stories coming out of different parts of the world from merchants, from trading ships, and so on. And plus, China felt like they had everything they needed, and they didn't need anything from Europe. So if we don't need anything from Europe, what's the point of trading with them? Okay. To limit their influence, number 3, they created foreign enclaves to control trade. Enclaves were small territories where only certain countries could trade. They were not allowed to trade outside the enclave. Okay, and here's a picture of that. So some countries might be designated this little part of the country, this part, or this part, and they could not operate outside those territories that were assigned to them. And this was the imperial policy of China. Okay, so you can trade in certain parts of our country, but for the most part, stay within these boundaries or you'll be asked to leave. However, despite those restrictions, Europeans still demanded Chinese goods such as tea and porcelain. And porcelain, again, is that fine ceramic sculpture for plates, cups, tea settings, etc. And Japan. Okay, during the 1500s of the 16th century, Japan was a feudal society, and land was given in exchange for protection. Now, last year in World History 1, we talked about feudalism in Europe. Here, Japan kind of had the same thing. A few differences, but there are a lot of similarities. Different names. Your nobles were called the king, lord, lesser lord. Japan, emperor, shogun, daimyo. And the warriors were knights. In Japan, they were called samurai. Code of conduct, chivalry. The Japanese, bushido. Alright, so here are some. I'm not going to go through all of these. Wow, I forgot how many are on here. Okay, so here are some similarities between them. Alright, you don't have to read them all, but the samurais, were like your knights. Okay, and they protected the kings, or in this case, the emperors and the shoguns, etc. Differences, which we'll get to here in a second. The big difference, there's the bell. Oh. The big difference was in feudal Japan, the emperor had no power. He was just there for show. Whereas in Europe, the king had total power. So Japan's government had an emperor, but he was powerless. The real leader of the government was the military leader called a shogun. In 1603, the shogun adopted a policy of isolation to keep out and limit foreign influences. Like China, they did not trust the Europeans. Okay. Here's some samurai. Oh, here we go. So this is kind of how it looked like, Japanese society. Emperor's right here. Again, he's just there for show. Dress fancy. The shogun was the real power. And you would also have the greater samurai or the lesser samurai also competing, challenging the shogun's power, depending on alliances, political alliances within the country, etc. Always fun to look at some good, cool pictures of samurai. So, like China, they did not trust the Europeans, and they used a policy called Sakoku, which means a closed country, around 1636. Japanese citizens were forbidden to leave, and foreigners could not enter. And at times, the death penalty could be used to enforce the policy. So they were very strict. The Chinese were very strict. Again, they felt like if they let the Europeans in, some of the bad things that happened to Africa, the Americas, would probably happen to them. So they were pretty smart in keeping the Europeans out, at least for the time being, because that certainly would not last forever. Alright, so that's it for this section. Questions, write them down, summarize your notes, and prepare for your test, which will be coming up in a few blocks. So finish those up, get your summary done, and I'll see you soon.